Hello, y'all. It is, as y'all can see down below, 4/16, December 10th, 2019. And I am doing a video actually going on the official website of ADOS, which stands for American Descendants of Slavery. I thought it was slaves, but it's actually slavery. Um, just in case y'all don't know about the founders, we're going to get into Tone and Yvette in a moment. Over the past several weeks to a month, I have actually gotten to know them a little bit better, through looking at their commentary. And for whatever reason, I thought Tone was a way older guy. Like, that goes to show you that I knew more about the movement than the actual people. Like, up until like 2 months ago, I didn't even know what Yvette Carnell really looked like, except for images here and there, but I never really heard her speak or anything like that. But I've always heard her more at the forefront. And then, of course, with her being lesbian, a lot of the black community has some negative things to say about that. And it's like, oh, here we go. But, neither here nor there. I was familiar with her more than Tone, but for whatever reason, I thought Tone was an older gentleman. He seems like, he is a little bit on the, mature side, but he's more like 40s as opposed to 60s. Same thing with, Irene. I think she's 40s as well, but, moisturizer haven't been doing her too well. In my professional opinion, Miss Irene is looking a little, you miss Yvette Carnell. Lord, I apologize, Irene. I'm thinking about a YouTuber name. Oh, Lord. And Irene definitely don't look that, unofficial. So apologies to the Irene that I was thinking about. But Yvette Carnell. Yvette is out here looking like 50 something. And if she is, she looks true to age. But I think she's really 40 something. So, ooh. The reparations could do with her with some moisturizer, but honey, that ain't for me to throw shade or, to try to push my aesthetics business upon, recommending some products. But let's get into the conversation. As y'all know, black people are serious this go round. We're tired of voting for the Democrats blindly without getting anything in return. Everybody else is able to have an agenda and it's not seen negatively. You have we broke it down on my platforms with every candidate. We've seen Bernie Sanders, we've seen Elizabeth Warren, we've seen Andrew Yang, Marion Williamson. All of them have proposals for Hispanics exclusively. We've seen proposals throughout the years for Jewish people exclusively, LGBT folks exclusively. The list goes on and on. But when it comes to black people, it's like anytime you talk about us, it's about policies that affects everybody in general, like climate change. Climate change is not something for black people. Climate affects the whole world. That's for everybody. So I hate when stuff is mentioned in the form of a black agenda, it's co-opted where it affects everybody. Like, once again, talking about loans for people who make under $100,000. Once again, that's for everybody. There's a lot of white people who are not making over $100,000 as well. I'm tired of black people seeming like, we're lacking in education when black women are currently at the highest levels of completion of graduating colleges, where a majority of black people are found out to be in middle class at the minimum. So it's not everybody's in low poverty class. So, yeah, breaking all those stereotypes. But once again, none of this is addressed except for Marion Williamson in the form of reparations to the tune of $200 to $500 billion. And then you have Andrew Yang, who is proposing universal basic income, which is something that the late Martin Luther King actually was in favor of. But ironically, nobody mentions that in regards to Martin Luther King. But I'm sure that they break this down in due detail. I actually took the time to look over some of the platform in advance before. So this won't be a raw reaction like I normally do. Usually y'all get my very first impressions, but for the sake of organizing this video and how I wanted to go by breaking this down, I thought it was best for me to get a little inside look of how it is. And ultimately, I'm still conflicted on this, and y'all going to see why. I am definitely for that there should be tangibles that there should be reparations. However, in the way that they're going by proposing it and the way I see them moving, I'm going to show you all the many problems, and we're going to, break all that down after I break, all of this down with, describing their platform. So let's go ahead and get into it. Now that the backstory's out the way, let's get into about the founders. So there's Miss Yvette Carnell. Like I said, just a little bit moisturizer, honey. And it ain't about her being light-skinned, because I know some of y'all are going to say, well, she's light-skinned. What do you expect? Well, because Bianca Lawson, who is Beyonce's older sister, is looking 20 years younger than Beyonce, who Beyonce looks like she ain't nothing but 30. Bianca is darn on the same complexion as Yvette Carnell, yet Bianca looking like she's 12, 13 years old. Once again, hard not life, honey. Like, reparations are definitely needed for some people to get... Okay, let me get off the skincare. I can't help it, y'all. Y'all know I'm a licensed esthetician, so I'm already looking into, like, ooh, child, we can do a little bit of microcurrent right here and, get her a little anti-wrinkle... Okay, but anyways, Yvette Carnell writes about politics, breath, and race. She is the founder of the weekly Breaking Brown political show. Before embarking on a career in news media, she served as congressional aide, first to Senator Barbara Boxer, Democrat out of California, and later to former Congressman Marlon Berry, who is a Democrat out of, I want to say, Arkansas. Her articles have been featured in the Huffington Post, Counterpunch, and Your Black World. And Your Black World is owned by the prestigious Dr. Boyce Watkins, who is currently in Ghana as we're, doing this video. She has been featured by national news outlets, including but not limited to the National Guardian, Politico, and NPR. She received her bachelor's in political science from Howard University. Okay, come on through, Miss Howard, honey. And then we got Antonio Moore. Like I said, he definitely looks like, 38, 39, 40 years old. But for whatever reason, I don't know why I was thinking about a 60-some-year-old man. But he still got quite a repertoire with him as well. Mr. Antonio Moore graduated from UCLA and Lawyer Law School. Yes, you heard right, honey. Brother is a darn gone lawyer, honey. We got Maxine Shaw on Living Single. Honey, we got our males out here that saying, honey, we can be lawyers too, honey, in the real world. So, anyways, continuing on, he is now a practicing Los Angeles-based attorney. Okay, he's on the West Coast. Maybe he flies out to the East Coast to help some of us East Coast folks, honey. It's the darn gone South that's been dealing with these darn gone racial-based issues a lot more than California. I mean, I understand that they got their shit out there too. I mean, they just had to pass a law to make it where hair discrimination is illegal in good old Sunshine State, honey, California. So they need to bring some of that over here to the East Coast, honey, because they still darn gonna doing the discrimination heavy and stuff over here. Love to know what type of law he specializes in. Don't say what type of they just say he's a practicing attorney. Moore hosts a weekly radio show at Dash Radio called Tone Talks, which I have gotten to see a few lengthy videos with him, and some where Yvette Carnell is on. Really enjoyed them. In recent years, he worked as a producer on the Emmy-nominated documentary entitled Crack in the System, presented by Al Jazeera. Haven't seen that, but I will look into that. It tells the story of the effects of mass incarceration, the Iran control, and the resulting crack cocaine epidemic that swept across the America. Definitely would be looking into that one. So that's a little bit of backstory about the founders. Now let's get into about ADOS. What's the good in all of it, honey? What are they breaking it down in intricate details? So about ADOS. ADOS was started by the brain trusts of Howard graduate and host of the Breaking Brown political show, Yvette Carnell, and UCLA A alums and attorney Antonio Moore, who hosts the weekly radio show Tone Talks. Okay, basically iterating what we said in their bios. So we'll skip through that. Then it goes into more brief details talking about in his book, America, Slavery, American Freedom. The historian Edmund Morgan concludes that slavery was not a contradiction of American freedom, but rather that slavery was the institution that made white freedom possible. In other words, slavery was not a mistake so much as a precondition for a societal hierarchy which requires descendants of slaves to remain a bottom caste and be made to suffer the necessary failures of a brutal economic system. Malware bites gone here somewhere now. Made me lose my place, honey. Where was we at? This was followed by Jim Crow era that saw ADOS become actual contagions that led to a destruction of wealth through federally supported discriminatory practices like redlining. Black presence literally made wealth disappear in communities, all while American whites and more recently immigrants enjoy advantages in a land of apparently equal opportunity that was in fact manufactured on the backs of black failure. According to Yale historian David Blight, by 1860s there were more millionaire slave holders all living in the lower Mississippi Valley than anywhere else in the United States. In the same year, Mississippi Valley, that might be why Vicky Diller was talking about she wanted to go into the Mississippi churches. I have been looking at some of her videos as well. Like I said, I'm trying to become more well versed on the whole subject in detail because I've only been hearing secondary. I'm now starting to get to the cream of the crop, to the actual people proposing this. So I've been looking at everybody, honey. Next, I have to go and look at Tariq Nasheed after all these months and see what he's talking about with the foundational Black Americans. He done created his own thing over there, and the name actually is a lot more favorable to me than ADOS, but I would describe that in another video. But then it goes on to say, according to Yale historian David Blight, by 1860s there were more. Okay, we mentioned that. It's the same year the nearly 4 million American slaves were worth some $3.5 billion, making them the largest single financial asset in the entire U.S. economy, worth more than all manufacturing and railroads combined. So slavery superseded everything else that was pretty much going on, the financial system. And you'll think that is probably the reason why more black people are disproportionately sentenced to longer jail times than white counterparts for the exact same crimes. Also, the fact that there is a bail system in place where it encourages, even if you're innocent, you set the bail at a significant high amount where you know that the average person does not have this amount of money, especially from this area. So you set it at an unreasonably high amount, thus forcing them to give up 10% to a bail bondsman, which most bail bondsmen are white men, right-ran organizations and companies, and thus we're giving our wealth away. So if somebody is accused of something and they need $10,000 bond for $100,000, you need to put up $10,000 to $15,000. Even if you're found innocent, you don't get that money back because that was the money used to, get the money for the bail bondsman to temporarily post. So the bail bondsman get his money back and gets to keep your $10,000. That was the profit motive for him. So that's in cases if you're found innocent. Now with white people, they are able to, pull out savings and get the full amount of money out, or put the house up or whatever, and then get the money back, or they asset back. But for black people, since we are economically deprived, we don't have that same luster. And you think that's done coincidental when the FBI once again has confirmed that white nationalist groups have infiltrated law enforcement? No, I don't think so. The same white nationalist groups that the ancestors of those that same groups were profiting off of privatized slavery have now gone into the prison system, which under the 13th Amendment allows slavery to continue under the guise of prison labor. So now you can't do it privately, but you can do it in the form of prison. Now these same white nationalist groups have shifted from cloaks of, the white Ku Klux Klan hoodies and whatever to darn on police badges and, magistrate robes and everything else. And you're disproportionately sentencing more black people to prison for the exact same crime compared to our white counterparts. You have police officers feeling like they need to shoot a black person on sight, even if they're running away, if they're playing a game in the house, if they're, riding down the street, and they just mentioned that they have a gun in the glove department, which is standard protocol when an officer pulls you over. If you're selling cigarettes, all of this stuff, which results in fatality when black people are doing it. But we see tons and tons of clips of white people literally hitting cops and spitting on cops and fighting and punching, taking your baton and whooping your ass with the baton and everything else, to the point where y'all came out with a whole television series that's been going on 20-some years called Cops, where over 90% of the people on the damn show are white people acting a plum tea fool. But we make up all the excuses of, oh, well, Eric Gardner should have did this, and maybe Sandra Bland, she shouldn't have had to been so loud, this, that, and the third. But I don't hear none of this shit when it comes to the white counterpart being just as belligerent or worse. Because like I said, you got a whole motherfucking successful show that darn gone was made off of a majority white people cutting the damn food, fighting with cops, having darn gone drug paraphernalia and all of them on there, and none of that shit is darn gone mentioned. Cops got taken off only for a hot second, and now it's done came back. I ain't heard nothing mentioned about that. But somehow we know the commonality is I never seen a fatality happen though. Even in cases where we seen footage of the darn white man whooping up on two cops' asses with their own batons, at no point in time did you pull out that gun and shoot him though. But you're going to shoot at somebody running away that's literally unarmed. It takes 11 people to darn take down one black man who's clearly overweight, who wouldn't have had the ability to run down the damn street, but y'all going to darn feel like y'all have to jump on him like he's shaped like John Cena or somebody. So y'all think that's a coincidence? I think not. But going on and further, codified by government and exploited by private actors, the creation of ADOS underclass served as the financial engine of a nation that never recognized the debt it owed to a group. As a result, as such, the ADOS movement is underpinned by the demand for reparations, justice, and making the group whole, and as necessary component in fulfilling the promise of opportunity from rich by design. ADOS have been historically excluded and denied. The truth of ADOS life is seen nowhere more clearly than the racial wealth gap in this country. And then they got a chart as comparison to white, blacks, and Latinos. And yes, we know Latino can be a combination of white, black, and indigenous people, but all of them share a cultural value of the Latino culture, speaking Spanish and having certain cultural influence and stuff that's tied strictly to them, that separates them from the typical black American and white American. So yes, before people put down there that Latino is not a race, we understand that, but culturally they do have differences from the average white person, from the average black person. So an Afro-Latina and a white Latina will still be considered Latina and distinctively different. So here we go. Looking at the gaps, both of us as Latinos and white people are at the bottom, but now with the recent push of trying to silence black voters and pander to Latinos, you see where the projection is going, where for the first time in history, Latinos are now looking to pass us economically. They still are treated lower substantially compared to their white counterparts, but notice the shift from the 80s to right around when President Barack Obama got in. They started trailing a little bit. And then look where we at right now, going into 2020 to 2024. And you can tell with the way that they're pandering to Hispanics, where your going as far as to completely decriminalize the border, and I'm talking about on the Democratic side, to making it where they can immediately qualify for welfare, because I took the time to look at everybody's platform in detail, and this is the shit that I'm hearing, where you're enforcing HIPAA laws where you can't ask for the IDs and stuff so much. They automatically, if they have a baby, they are qualified as an automatic citizen, temporarily too. So it's like, well, shoot, a Mexican woman can just come over here, get knocked up, and know she can't, she's pretty much guaranteed to stay here. Or if she goes and snatch somebody else's child up, which has been happening, they can because they're not even taking DNA tests or nothing to vet. If the Latina woman just comes and gets somebody else's child and the child doesn't say nothing, there's no DNA test. Or I am shocked. Like the hear all of this, because there are actual Hispanic families and stuff that are being separated, but there are, on the flip side, actual people smuggling in other people's children that are not biologically related to them. And then to hear that there are not any DNA tests, and the Democratic Party is trying to make it where it's not even required, and you trying to make it where they automatically get food stamp benefits and everything from children that they bringing in that don't have no actual ties to them. So now we're encouraging reverse trafficking in a way where it's like, well, as long as you bringing people in as opposed to taking people out. Hell, they don't even really focus on the trafficking about the people being taken out, because last year 2,000 Native American women were trafficked out, and there was not a peep from nationwide media. Over 60,000 black women were taken out this year alone. Not a peep from darn gone Fox News, CNN, ABC. So it is very bipartisan to our dismay that is not even mentioned. But when you talking about trafficking people in, honey, in droves, honey, the Democrats are darn gone flipping darn gone hot tail to get them in here. Don't give a damn, even knowing the criminality aspect. And then my girl Nyla, shout out to Nyla, says, I seen her darn gone video talking about how, a group of Hispanics who actually had criminal records, which included rape, sexual assault, murder, and everything else, was released after 3 weeks. And what neighborhoods do you think they were released in? Now, this is not to demonize all Hispanics, because I understand that there are groups that need protection, such as our DACA, and that's where I disagree with some of my pro-black folks, because I believe that the ones who have been here since they were young and don't know nothing but American culture, it is a little bit unjust to force them to go back to a country that they don't even know of. Now, I don't understand how in the hell you got two darn gone parents that come directly from that Spanish-speaking country. I understand that you want your child to blend in, but it's like, bitch, you could at least make them darn gone bilingual. I don't understand that. Yes, you trying to assimilate them to American culture, and you trying to hide that you directly from Mexico, but that doesn't mean you have to stop speaking Spanish. I don't understand people who have two Spanish parents can't speak a lick of Spanish. That always confused the fuck out of me. How in the hell you got two parents that come directly from a Spanish-speaking country, and you don't know how to speak a lick of darn on Spanish? That shit darn gone hurts the fuck out of me. But needless to say, regardless of whether you speak Espanol or not, honey, they darn gone flipping over to darn gone panda, where they're speaking Spanish on the debate stage, having Spanish moderators, all this, that, and the third. Notice at no point in time did they have any darn gone West Indian or African darn gone people on the panels. And like darn gone, well, what about the darn gone African countries? Because when we talk about immigration issues, I would think we want to be fair across everybody. But we're going to stick to darn gone ADOS. That was me on my little soapbox. Boom, 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 boom. And I'm back. Shout out to James Caldwell. But yeah, like I said, there's a little chart right there, and then there's another chart right here: median household net worth by race and education. We have our white counterparts, and then here's our blacks right here. Then we go to figure 2, which is the net worth by race and employment status. Then number 3, which is median household net worth by race and household income quantile. And last but not least, 4, median household net worth by race and home ownership. And then y'all know about the 2008 home crisis where, you know, black people were forced into certain types of loans and got our houses darn gone snatched and took away from us. But, you know, President Barack Obama bailed out the darn gone automotive industry. And that made me look at his ass suspect even then. I'm like, you bailing out the automotive industry. And we in the midst of a darn gone recession that done affected so many black people. That was this darn gone white American mother coming out of him. And I ain't even trying to be divisive on, you know, race issues. Y'all know I love all my folks. I love my white brothers and sisters, Latinos, Native Americans, Asians. We don't do the divisiveness over here, honey. But my thing is this. It's like, how in the hell you a black darn gone president got in on the black American vote? You have a black American wife and half darn gone African American, black American children. And you had the House in the Senate blue for the first 4 years. And we're now just bringing this ADOS mess up in 2018-19. And it's like, this has been a conversation. But when it came to this with the home ownership and shit, this is when the ADOS should have been popping off back in 2008, 2009, 10, 11, 12. You had control of, so this goes to show that the Republicans aren't just complacent in the darn gone debauchery of economic depression of black people, but the Democrats is as well. Now they trying to darn gone somewhat sing a different tune, because now they seeing that black folks are not dealing with this shit anymore. Half of them are trying to bet on, well, we already starting to replace them. You see how the you know, the immigrants, predominantly Hispanics, are rising compared to black people. So it's like, I don't need to even darn gonna mention nothing about them. So that's what Pete Buttigieg and all of them are betting on. Pete Buttigieg is going in on that. The same thing for Joe Biden and all of them. And then sadly, Bernie Sanders too. Bernie Sanders really is like, well, hell, I got them on the contingency that I walked with darn on Martin Luther King back in 1962. You got darn on Nina Turner darn on being, and I hate to say it to my educated sister, but you darn gonna keep opening up your shirt like you at a wrestling ring talking about he been doing this since 1962. And I've been asking you time and time and time again, what have you done for me lately, boo? What has he done for me lately, boo-boo? What has he done lately? What have you done for me lately? Every time I ask Nina Turner that, and somebody else who chuckle and jive, same thing for darn gone Killer Mike. You up there killing it on the debate stage with these darn gone token people where you know they ain't going to be able to answer the questions like that. You darn gone got T.I. up there. But you won't darn gone dare get somebody like me to be on the debate stage with darn gone Killer Mike. You won't dare have darn gone sit under Nina Turner, have the darn gone balls to get me up on a debate stage with her. I'll give them a run for their darn gone money. Don't let this darn gone country Bama accent darn gone fool you, honey. I got a well-educated vernacular too, and I'm very well-read on my herstory. Not history, but herstory, baby. Now, you might be a little bit more educated than me because you was a professor down near the darn gone college and darn gone Virginia and whatnot. So you might be able to phonetically pronounce your words in a little bit more palatable way to the general public. But best believe, baby, I can get my darn gone point across too in an authentic way. Just because you got a little bit more wordplay with your darn gone pastoring line behind, don't mean that you authentic. Because once again, we're talking about 1962. You can't tell me what he's done since then. You done been in the darn gone Congress since 1980s. And we know him, he voted on the darn gone crime bill right along with Joe Biden. Y'all threw Hillary Clinton under the damn bus talking about, well, she darn gone was the high point. I don't know. How the hell did the first lady become the high point of the damn crime bill? And the last time I checked and did my civics and darn gone history, darn gone first lady can't propose a motherfucking thing. So even if she was in favor of whatever, upon figuring out that it disproportionately affected black people, whose responsibility was it to darn gonna modify the damn law? It damn sure wasn't the first lady. So I get sick and tired of when people bring up the crime bill. You always want to bring up Hillary Clinton as the first lady. But we turn a blind eye to Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders, who are actually senators, who have the darn right to propose a darn law change. Which would have been easy to darn get passed if you were serious during the time that Bill Clinton was going through an impeachment any damn way. So you telling me y'all couldn't darn come up with a 66 majority? Now what does that darn say? Because last time I checked, the Senate can propose an amendment to a darn law. The president can darn veto it, and then you can override the damn pocket veto by a 2/3 majority vote. So what does that say about the Democrats and the Republicans of that time frame who are still here, who think they can darn now act like they darn for some of the people? Because once again, that's your legacy, Bernie Sanders, upon entering office. So I don't give a damn what you did when you was 16 years old. When you was darn 50-some years old, wise enough to know damn better, this is what you was doing during the time frame of 1994, 95, 96. But once again, they don't answer that though. They act like they don't hear me. They hear me, but they act like they don't hear me. But let's go on. See, I done went and darn got on into my tangent. I feel like that's not going to be the only one when I look at this darn throughout the rest of this, y'all. So y'all gonna have to excuse me if I darn start deviating into other subjects. But once I start reading stuff about ADOS and I get to comparing about what's going on with Congress today, it gets me going on a darn rant about the darn hypocrisy that is going on. So we're gonna continue breaking down, ADOS in its website entirety. But y'all gonna have to excuse me if from time on time, I got to darn get in some people's darn asses about they darn hypocrisy. Especially that darn Bernie Sanders that a lot of people like to darn toad up pudding. Okay, now getting into the meat and potatoes. Let me get a sip of my soda real quick. The Black Agenda. So, as a Pacific group with a Pacific justice claim, the ADOS movement demands a Pacific agenda with policy prescription that addresses the losses stemming from the institutional of slavery, Jim Crow, redlining, convict leasing, mass incarceration, and immigration. We demand for Black America, which includes but not limited to, and y'all know how it is with this fan, so y'all, and it always happen around the half hour of the video. My nose get to sniffling, y'all. So if y'all familiar with me by now, y'all know it is what it is, y'all. This darn messed up immune system minds with this Crohn's disease. But we're going to keep it pushing. So we set aside for American descendants of slavery, not minorities, a throwaway category which includes all groups except white men, which is true because minority can be a white woman, it can be an Asian, it can be a Native American, it can be a Polynesian, it can be a Pacific Islander, it can be any type of darn person that is not classified as a darn white man. Too open of a term when you're trying to describe black issues. That categorization has allowed Democrats to use programs like affirmative actions as giveaways to all groups in exchange for votes. Honey, that's what we've been seeing with this current darn voting right now going on. The bribery must end. It begins with a new designation on the census with ADOS and another for black immigrants. Black immigrants should be barred from accessing affirmative action and other set-asides intended for ADOS, as should Asians, Latino, white women, and other minority groups. And I'm going to have to push back against that. I'm going to show y'all why when I finish my statement. In addition, ADOS hiring and employment data must be demanded for all businesses receiving tax credits, incentives, and government support, as well as government agencies, national, state, and local. It is our belief that this will show that there are a minimal, if any, ADOS professionals in the field, including but not limited to engineering, medical, legal, and tech. okay, once again, I'm going to have to give a little bit of pushback on that, because I'm definitely for tangibles and benefits being given exclusively to Black Americans that descend from American chattel slavery. However, when we talk about limiting and barring people from affirmative action, that is a no-go, because affirmative action, even though it was in more intent to be for the progression of Black people that descend from American chattel slavery, and even the West Indies slave trade during that time, because during that time we had our West Indies brothers marching along with us. You know, our people from Trinidad and Tobago and Barbados, especially Haiti, honey. They was marching heavy with us. So we got to realize that during that time frame, it was not just for Black Americans, but for our West Indies folks as well. And then to say and turn around now and say that they should be barred, when they were very pivotal in getting this passed, with marching with, you know, the likes of Coretta Scott and Dr. Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, etc. And then you had white people marching as well, you know, i.e. the Bernie Sanders of the world, where he was more, some of y'all said he was darn on putting on and knew where he was going even from there. I would say that he was probably genuine back during those time frames, but as he got in Congress and that money started looking some type of way more favorable to his groups, he started to become more and more complacent with the atrocities going on to Black people. Once he got older, he got more older and foolish and corrupt as opposed to older and wiser. So you had white people marching for our rights as well. You had Native Americans who could relate to a certain extent, not congruent, but similar to us, that was marching. So to then turn around and say none of them should be getting, you know, affirmative action benefits is a little bit distasteful. Instead of barring people from, you know, affirmative action, which, you know, Martin Luther King pushed mostly from an immigrationist point of view. He was a person that was for more bringing everybody together versus a sole, you know, Black equality, and we can have our own shit over here, let us be us, like a Malcolm X. So since this was made by way of kumbaya, in a way of it supposed to be equal to everybody that's marginalized, you don't get the darn gonna turn the narrative around 50-some years later and say it's only for Black Americans. We need to have something now exclusively for us, and that's not trying to change something that's already been set in stone that's supposed to benefit everybody that's not a white man. So I understand the premise of that we need something exclusively for us, but by trying to forbid other people from using affirmative action, that's not the way to go. We are so far beyond affirmative action at this point. We need our own Pacific policy nowadays. You can't build upon a foundation that was already cracked. And I hate to disrespect Martin Luther King like that, but even Martin Luther King woke up in his final days and said he led his people into a darn gone burning building. So why would you try to change the affirmative action to now be for Black people when the premise and the creation from which the affirmative action was thought upon was from somewhat of a flawed logic? It was done with good intention. Just like and this is where I get backlash. The crime bill was done initially with good intention from some folks. That's why the NAACP, the Congressional Black Caucus, Reverend Al Sharpton, and Jesse Jackson, all of them pushed it as well. You don't hear them. You always hear about the demonization of the Clintons or whatever. But it was done with good intention, but then the people who was really running the shit behind the scenes, unbeknownst to a lot of people, it targeted us, and it was never corrected. That's what really pisses me off. Not that you was originally for the original concept, but you didn't change it afterwards. So going back to affirmative action, where you seen it started benefiting white women more than Black people in general, and there was no corrections taken, that's where I really get upset with it. But I think it's far too long at this point to talk about correcting affirmative action. We need to create a whole nother laws from scratch. That way we know that the foundation is solid. We're coming from this solely from Black exclusivity, not from, everybody together. You can't darn gonna try to, not all houses can be darn gonna revamped and darn gonna stack back together. The foundation overall, it was done with good intention. So respect to, the King family. However, we seen in history, that it was flawed, and it was not, the foundation is crumbled, and we can't darn gonna try to build back the house for it to be for us blacks exclusively. So I push back on trying to bar people from affirmative action from different groups. We need to progress forward as black American descendants of chastised slaves and create a whole nother law that is for us and for the progression of our people today, if that makes sense. So going on from there, once affirmative action is streamlined as a government program only and specifically for ADOS, the program should be fully reinstituted. Okay, and like I said, I just gave a whole dissertation on why I am not for changing the affirmative action. Instead, I'm for creating a whole different action instead that is for black Americans. Because you've seen that they added to other laws exclusively for Hispanics, for Jewish Americans, for LGBT, for who else? Asians are currently proposing reparations for not being paid enough for the railroads, the descendants of those Asian railroad workers, and we did not have to change the concept of affirmative action. So black people, we need to follow in the lights of people who's been more successful at getting their darn own stuff done right now. Because I've seen with other groups, when they move for more of a cohesiveness of, getting something exclusive to them instead of trying to change what's already is, they prove to be more successful. So once again, we need to get off affirmative action and build up a whole nother foundation, which is creating a policy from scratch that is beneficial exclusively towards black descendants of enslaved, Americans here. Specifically black Americans that were enslaved, not indentured servants, because when you think of indentured servants, you think of the Irish who were only slaved here for 7 years. They was not subject to the endless whips and tortures as black people, and then they was out. They was considered equal people that did not have to worry about, being taken back into slavery upon their release. Even black people who became free, they could still be snatched back into slavery under certain circumstances. So we should not even be confusing indentured servitude into this as well. So like I said, I'll reiterate one more time, our best bet is to have a whole new policy made exclusively for black people from scratch. That's my humble opinion. Then they go on to say the Supreme Court decided wrongly when it gutted the Voting Rights Act. As the Atlanta Journal-Constitution article, "It's time to solve the mystery of 100,000 mystery votes," indicates the protections outlined in the Voting Rights Act are essential to protecting the rights of ADOS in America. Reinstituting the protection of the Voting Rights Act is key part of our agenda. Okay. And y'all excuse me real quick. See, I hate to get into another distraction, but how many of y'all see this? The South, I understand that climate change does affect us as well. And black people, we need to focus on the climates and stuff. Because, honey, it was just cold yesterday. It was foggy and everything yesterday. Now, why am I darn gonna about to get up and turn my darn on AC on today? I'm so sick and tired of this bipolar weather. You would think I was in Florida as opposed to darn on North Carolina. Hold on, y'all. Okay, y'all, I'm back. Like I said, this bipolar weather getting to me, darn on triggering my eczema, my Crohn's disease, and my darn on, I can't get rid of this darn on sniffling or whatever, because it's like I got to have a fan on and turn the AC on, and then nighttime coming, got to turn the heat on. I'm actually surprised my darn on light bill is going down as opposed to up, honey. My darn on bill been steady decreasing by like $10 each month. Honey, I guess they know that the struggle is real out here for us darn on people having to go through this bipolar weather, honey. But back to the bipolarness of this darn on, ADOS and the way that we're going by trying to execute this. So let me get back into my train of thought, y'all. Like I said, it threw me for a loop. I'm trying to darn gonna read this a whole lengthy article. I already know that this is gonna go down as my longest video in history. Cause y'all know, to date, I just started this year recording consistently hour-long videos. Before then, it would be extremely rare for me to record a video for 40-50 minutes. Now I've started doing this on a regular. And I think the longest video to date was like 1 hour and 40 minutes. I think I might finally top that today. This might be a 2-hour video. So y'all pray for me, because I'm not known. I mean, I can talk. I'm long-winded to a certain extent. But, honey, I've never done a multi-hour video before. So we're going to see how this goes. So the Supreme Court decided wrongly when it gutted. Okay, we mentioned that. Black businesses only receive 1.7% of the $23.09 billion in small business, SBA small business loans, I'm assuming. Under President Obama, SBA Small Business Administration, after having previously received 8.2% under President George W. Bush. Oh God, honey. That damn. Now that really didn't add to your darn history, darn President Barack Obama. Really? Damn. Damn. I hate to even say this, but how in the hell did you do worse than the white man? It's like, honey, you just saying from a black. So to all y'all motherfucking Hebrew Israelites and shit out there that says you are the seed of your father, honey, darn come get darn Barack together. Honey, Africans, y'all can't even blame this on the white side. Y'all say it's from the seed of the father, honey. Y'all want to ignore mitochondria, DNA, and all that shit. Honey, come get your darn African brother together. Because how in the hell the black in you is directly from the motherland? The purest of the pure. And you do black people like this. Hi, damn. With darn people like you, who the fuck needs darn enemies? How in the hell we receive over darn 4 times as much under a full white president, but we got a darn biracially black president whose half is darn African, darn do us worse off economically than our darn white man in America. God damn. Now I wasn't even expecting that one. I don't know how I overlooked that the first time I glossed over this darn video. Hi, damn a bell. Got to be more careful. Like I said, with darn people like Obama, who the fuck needs darn enemies, honey? I can see why some of y'all been darn sending messages talking about move over to the Republican Party. At least we won't be economically as worse off. God damn. Let me get on out my feelings. But succeeding as an entrepreneur requires capital, so our agenda demands that 15% of SBA loans be distributed to ADOS businesses, which is right on, because proportionally it should be divided in such a way where it's comparable to your where you rank racially in America. So we know that obviously black people represent 15% of the population. So ideally you would think that when it comes to, the division of loans and stuff, it will be divided up proportionately to your racial groups of people. So Native Americans will get access to 2%. Latinos now can get access up to like 10%, because I'm trying to deduct from the illegal immigrants from the one, because they in the census they just calculate everybody, both illegal and legal. So I'm thinking that legal immigrants here are about like 10% of the population that are of the Hispanic persuasion. And then black people, we are like 15% of the population. Even though that's a little bit skewed too, because you got your quadroons and some of your biracials that are identified as black people. I think there should be a whole different racial classification for those people as well. But nonetheless, we currently stand at approximately 15% of the population. So we should proportionally get 15% of the loans. Not no damn 1.7%, because I don't know what the hell President Barack Obama was darn thinking, honey. I don't know what the hell he was darn thinking. No wonder so many and I was darn still sleep back in darn college. Like, I've always been relatively conscious, but it took me years and years to fully become awoken. I am now wide awake. So back when I was still somewhat in the days, I was still on the Obama train and everything else. And y'all know I went to school and got my associates in business with an emphasis in marketing. And I was shocked because that was the first time I ever came across so many. I mean, I've had Republicans in my family, both black, black, white, and Indian or whatever. However, I never came across so many black people that were Republican until I went to school for business. And we had a discussion. We was talking about politics in one of my business classes. And they was mentioning about how Republicans are actually more favorable economically. And, we was having a little bit of, not the regular conversation. We got into some racial talks. I don't know how this happened. But we end up going there with the race topics and stuff about blackness. And, it was a real interesting conversation because our teacher was white and over half our class was white, but we was really going into the racial aspects, the economics and everything, even though that was not really pertaining to the subject. It was one of those days where, we was having our random discussions and we dived into that darn on topic, and a lot of darn on black people were darn on turned out. Now, of course, it was some fellow people like me that was like, what the hell wrong with y'all? Like, I don't understand how y'all can be darn on black and Republican. And they basically is the party of doggone racism. But now, being fully awakened, we now see the corruption on both sides, son. So, 1.7%, I still can't get over that one. Oh, my goodness. Let's move on, because I spend doggone 50 minutes talking about doggone that doggone 1.7%. God damn. No wonder some people was talking about bring Bush back. We seek a multi-billion-dollar infrastructure plan targeted to ADOS communities, including but not limited to the Black Belt, Flint, Michigan. A Reuters examination published in 2016 found 3,000 cities with poisoning rates higher than Flint. Honey, we know it. I just told y'all in North Carolina, we got darn on Gen X in our darn on Cape Fear River, honey. And y'all know that's darn on definitely dangerous for somebody like me who already have a fucked up darn on immune system. So we got to have our darn on filters on everything, our showers, making sure it ain't getting in the hair and the skin and all of that. Make sure we got the I got the zero bottled water thing. I got the matter of fact get another replacement cartridge for the zero water filter. Cause our darn on shit so contaminated, my darn on thing already done red past 6. You know they say after it gets up to the 6 on the, and if you have a zero water filter, you know what I'm talking about. You supposed to replace it, honey. I let my thing go all the way up to 50, and now it's reading about 80, and it's like, oh yeah, it's definitely time to replace this. Now your water is technically safe to drink up to like 200 parts per million, but honey, I ain't trying to get nowhere near there. Soon as that shit said 80, I'm already looking to go to the store this weekend to get a darn on replacement cartridge for my zero water filter, honey. But yeah, we definitely have it here, honey. So he's talked about residents of majority ADOS areas that have been poisoned under the federal, local, and state government, which such but not limited to Michigan, Denmark, South Carolina. Honey, y'all keep talking about South Carolina, but North Carolina, we don't get no love over here either. It's darn on poisoning us too. And others must financially compensate for the benign neglect of the environmental protection agencies and the government in general. The Justice Department must also institute protections which exact heavy fines in federal criminal prosecutions for future offenders. Now I'm going to, get another pushback on this subject, but believe it or not, it was last minute, but I have to give credit where credit is due. At least her Indian ass did put this on her agenda. Now, this wasn't a full black agenda because, like I said, this issue affects quite a bit of other groups too. It affects low-income white people that live in our areas. This affects Native Americans. I know the Lumbee River is messed up, and that's a predominantly, Indian territory in North Carolina. So it affects a lot of minorities, but black people are definitely prone to this shit amongst the worst out of everybody. But Kamala Harris, shout out to Kamala Harris, who is no longer running, but I definitely employed people with my video, and unfortunately not too many people saw it, so maybe this will employ y'all to finally give that video a good look-see of why, you know, some people should pick up 2 specific policies that she had. Because Kamala Harris, I will give her this, she actually proposed $250 billion. Once again, you heard that right. She didn't just say a few billion. She went as far as to propose $250 billion towards infrastructure for bad pipes, especially focusing in low-income neighborhoods. She went in full detail about the Flint, Michigan water crises and the contaminants of water in Pacific black and brown neighborhoods. And she wants to propose as much as $250 billion to get those pipes and stuff fixed. So on the infrastructure part, when dealing with contaminated water, honey, this was darn gone Kamala Harris darn gone strongest suit right here. But her dumb ass didn't darn gonna relate to the black people enough. She had that, but she wasn't able to fully articulate that, along with combining that with other black agendas such as economic restitution. She had the criminality set right. She was on the money for the most part on the criminality and getting that under control, dealing with the blue walls of silence. She had this in a platform, but the third thing she was missing, which made black people cancel her ass, is number one, you originally didn't want to put it on your platform. You said, oh no, I ain't gonna have nothing for black people. And then second, you came out with this shit in September, but you signed up to become a presidential candidate in January. So you was late as fuck on putting it on your platform. Then you wasn't as boisterous in proposing the economic restitution when it came to black people. You focus on the other 2 things, but not in enough. But she did have this nonetheless. So hopefully, you know, Marianne Williamson can take up this point and add this to hers and strengthen her platform, because Lord knows, the one person that's in there that's actually for black people fully is not getting the darn coverage that she is. And I'm going to get on ADOS about that in a moment too. But, you know, maybe, you know, to my Marianne Williamson viewers who are looking at this, y'all, you know, we can add this in with what Kamala stated. She wanted to propose $250 billion to fix the pipes, especially in low-income black neighborhoods. I have to give that to her, but once again, the fact that, you know, she pussyfoot on proposing it, she didn't half-ass want to do anything for black people in the first place. That's what made people overlook the fact that she even proposed that darn policy. No other candidate I've heard mention as far as $250 billion towards fixing, you know, corrupted pipes and stuff. Now, Marianne Williamson has been very vocal on, you know, getting on the EPA's behind and everything else, which is why I said she's been done just downright wrong, not to be fully supported behind, you know, with certain people. But we'll get to that in a moment. But then they go into talking about mass incarceration has wreaked havoc on black American families. By some accounts, there are literally more black males in prison than all women are incarcerated on the planet. Ah, dang. And I already told y'all why that is. You think it's a coincidence that the prison industry is on the New York Stock Exchange? There's an incentive for imprisonment. There is a quota that certain cops need to meet during certain times of the year. My thing is this: why is there a quota when the hope of a cop should be that there should be low crime? You in an ideal world, you should hope that it gets to a point where you have to lay people off because crime rate is low. I remember there was a brief period of time in North Carolina where officer arrest is stored, you know, a proper law and order. And he was a white cop, but he did it in such a way in a predominantly black neighborhood where he wasn't darn gone out here shooting people. And this was people he could have had justifiable reason to shoot. Like you literally fighting with a police officer, punching them, and he still had enough decorum to be able to arrest somebody and not have to result in a fatality, and turn the negative of drug sales and stuff around to a point where He was actually getting out his car. He would hide the police car down the road. He would march into the cuts of certain woods, and he was getting on black people's asses, but doing it in such a way where at the same time you didn't have to worry about unjustly police brutality. So I understand that there are, good officers who, are not all corrupt and whatever. And how did I end up getting into a personal story with this? What made me get into this? Oh, with the more blacks are in prison than anything. So I don't want this to be a division between cops and, black people. But at the same time, we got to recognize not everybody that, okay, now I know where I'm tying this in. Not every white officer is like our good officer Rest that is in Fayetteville, North Carolina, where even though it's a conservative swing state, there are still an influx of white people who have been part of white nationalist groups that unfortunately have diabolical means of targeting black people from a different agenda. Instead of actually trying to get peace in corrupted neighborhoods like our officer West did in Fayetteville, without having to result in killing people, without resulting in framing drugs on people or none of that darn on shit. We see that in other states we have white officers planting crack cocaine on black people who was originally stopped for a traffic light, but then your dash cam is on and we see you planting the drugs, or somebody that's black done died in their house and then you went back after the ambulance was gone and then you went and took their medications and stuff. Now granted, the person can't use the medications because the person went to the hospital, ended up dying. I think he died of a heart attack. But we see an officer felt the need to go in the house and get the darn on pain medications and stuff. And then fortunately, fortunately for his family, honey, it was a darn on camera in there that the officer was not aware of. Done caught the whole thing. So this is what we have to deal with today by the same descendants of the same group that used to profit off of our darn on labor, that made more money than all of their darn on institutions combined, the railroads and anything that they were doing. They said slavery made more money than anything else in America combined that was going on. And now they gonna end up getting into the prison industry and into law enforcement and into the educational system and diluting the history, altering the history, setting up a school to prison pipeline, and then getting you into the prison, making it hard for you to ever come out and become a citizen, encouraging recidivism by taking books, because this is what's going on in North Carolina right now today. That they went as far as to try to propose taking away certain black educational books out of the prison industry. Now, if you don't want somebody to repeat crimes, if you're really for, people changing and becoming back into society, back cold, why are you making it harder for them? Why were there proposals to take away GED and programs for people in prison, defund, education for people in prison? Why are we taking books on education for people in prison if you don't want to encourage recidivism? And then this is strategically happening in black areas. Let that make sense. And once again, these are the same areas where historically were built on the Confederacy, which was against slavery. And now fast forward to the modern day 21st century, we have the descendants of that same group that is still in institution, now in law enforcement, trading your capes for the darn robe and the badge. And then you get to walk down the street for the ones who are not in law enforcement and still wreak and try to incite a violence response. And then you're not labeled as a terrorist group, even though you have a history of lynching the most people out of anybody in history in America. I know I'm on another tangent, but I told y'all this is what was going to happen, so y'all deal with it real quick. But I'm making a historical connection. Fast forward once again to the 21st century, you had the same descendants making the choices within law enforcement, which is why I propose that there should be a special prosecution. But then it goes to here to say, to give context, there are 20 black million males, and they are largely descended from slavery, while there are 4 billion women globally. Both groups produce the same numbers of incarceration, which is a problem within itself, considering that we see that the majority of crimes, which was reported by the Federal Bureau of Investigations, which includes, but not limited to, attempted murder and murder, which is the highest crimes that you commit in the land, are done by white people more than black people. So explain to me, even with those stats reported by the FBI as well, you have more black people in prison, but the stats does not match up, because the stats say that white people are committing the crimes more than black people, but there are more black people in prison than white people. How does that make sense? How does that make sense that the reports show that the crimes are being committed more by white people, but there are more black people in prison, and we represent only 15% of the population compared to 60? For every black person, there's 4 white people in America. Let it make sense. Unless it's done by systematic design to keep us economically oppressed, at them still benefiting off the oppression. Because once again, why is there an incentive for a prison to turn a profit? Because in a perfect world, you will want your prisons to be empty as opposed to full. And Kamala Harris, why I admire you for your $250 billion proposal towards war, fixing the broken pipes and the contaminated waters in black and brown neighborhoods. Once again, people couldn't darn gonna look at that part of your policy, because you came in as an Indian American woman, and as an Indian American woman that ran as Attorney General in California, you was perpetuating some of this same bullshit as a prosecutor. And then people are wondering, why isn't Amy Klobuchar facing the same type of backlash? Because number one, Amy Klobuchar, she might have some dirt up her sleeves, but it's definitely twice as worse if you're trying to parade yourself as an actual black woman. You're trying to actually say you're a black woman, and you did this to your own, you actually perpetuate this to your own people. You actually was trying to get people in prison over truancy laws. In addition to darn going, not hearing cases of black people who told you that they were framed. Even though that we're now seeing evidence nationwide of black people who have indeed been framed, which is justifiable cause for somebody who's an attorney general to give a black person a listen when they say they have been framed for certain cases. Now, when we see evidence of darn police is framing them. But Kamala Harris, you said that under your administration that your officers had the cameras turned on, which once again found out to be another damn lie. Because if they had the cameras on, you would have been able to see the corruption and you would have dealt with it. But the reality is, you at the time did not really want to deal with it, because you are on record saying that you cannot release certain people from prison, because what are we going to darn do as far as who's going to pick up the trash on the side of the street, thus encouraging the for-profit motive of the for-profit prison. And now just darn less than 5 years later, you're trying to do a whole 180, because a 360 is going back to the same position. I don't know why people say 360. 180 is when you're trying to be the complete opposite of what you are. 360 is going back to the same position. A little bit of geometry facts for y'all. I may not be the best in geometry, but I know that much. But this bitch tried to do a whole 180 and act like she's now for taking down the prison industry. But your darn record, just as short as 2 years ago, shows that you was darn funding the darn corruption, bitch. Let it make sense. And you was wondering why so many people was darn hooting and hollering and darn throwing a parade when your ass darn had to hit the dust. Ashes to ashes, dust to wanna-be black bitches, honey. And I ain't sorry. In my Beyonce voice, honey. But now that that reading's over, let's continue on with reading the rest of this ADOS darn. I told y'all this is gonna be my first 2-hour video today. I hope y'all got y'all snacks and darn chips and shit, cause there might be some more dragging and taking of somebody good edges, honey. You might have a good grade of hair, but you gonna be a bald bitch by the time I'm done reading you down, honey. Cause I predict that's not gonna be my last dragging of Miss Kamala Harris. But once again, I do give credit where credit's due. Shout out for her $250 billion proposal. But once again, all of that got muted down with your darn hypocrisy, honey. Which is why I employ somebody who actually is authentic with this, such as Marion Williamson, to pick up that goodness from Kamala Harris out of her policy, because it would go a lot more longer and people will receive it better from somebody such as Marion Williamson versus flip-flopping Kamala Harris. But continuing on. We also demand that there be a review if punishment, bail amount, sentence lengths, amount of time served before parole is being levied at unfairly high levels on ADOS based on gender, race for similar crimes to other groups. And I just went into the whole historical history of how that has affected us. We demand that there be a real prison reform in the form of investment into counseling, job training, and rehabilitation for incarceration. And like I said, you can start by getting on these southern states that's trying to take away books and forbid people from getting degrees in their prison. But you don't want to encourage recidivism, but you try to make it hard for somebody to be economically stable once they get out of prison. And it's disproportionately affecting black people compared to white people. But once again, we know that this is by systematic design. And this is why I'm with Elizabeth Warren, a white woman, over black. Because we can't just go off of, oh, somebody's black or somebody's Jewish. They can somewhat think they can relate to the struggle. Because once again, all skin folk ain't kinfolk. Some of our fellow marginalized people ain't necessarily for us, because we seen the flip-flopness with Bernie. We now seen the hypocrisy with Kamala Harris. Cory Booker, there might be a little bit of minuscule hope right there. But honey, it's a little bit inauthentic considering some of the stuff factoring in with him. And then it's like, Native American Elizabeth Warren, I had to give her an eye roll on that. However, I will give her this. She has been one of the first to propose, ending for-profit prisons. And I'm definitely here for it. Because until you end the for-profit prison motives, you're still going to have these corrupt incentives. That the modern day white supremacists that went from the Ku Klux Klan and other white nationalist groups have now got into law enforcement. You got to take away the whole for-profit incentive out of, taking them off the stock exchange and, pretty much demonetizing them. Hell, y'all focusing on demonetizing everybody on YouTube. There needs to be a mass demonetization of prisons. And that way you don't have no financial incentive to arrest black people anymore. And now Ooh, Lord, my walls are hella thin, y'all. Threw me out. But like I said, what's going to happen after they can't use. So we need to learn from last time to get prepared. So once they demonetize them prisons, honey, y'all better be ready so y'all don't have to stay ready. And I'm going to save that for another video, because once again, y'all seen what happened when slavery ended. We end up having to deal with 90 years of Jim Crow, but this time we learned from our ancestors. So when we end this modern day version of slavery and end this for-profit prisons, honey, be prepared for them to try to retaliate with some modern day lynchings and stuff. But this time we going to be ready. Which is why I am not for the limitation of the Second Amendment, which is another thing I see Democrats being crafty and doing. Because, once again, if you end the for-profit prisons, them motherfuckers officers are going to have a nasty response, just similar to their ancestors when slavery ended. There were more black people killed during Jim Crow than slavery. So we don't want a repetition in the 21st century, especially when they have access to automatic weapons, and they forbidden us from having weapons by trying to make it where if you had a previous record when you was young, and when you had If you're diagnosed with a mental illness such as depression and all that shit, they're trying to make it, if you had a domestic violence suit and all of that, you're darn gone forbidden from darn gone weaponry. And I darn gone just tackled that in my second Tulsi Gabbard video. So y'all check that out down below. I will leave that. I just recorded it yesterday on gun legislation and why it's so dangerous to be on, you know, limiting gun rights. And I used to be a person that was for limiting until my eyes became aware of how that could be used against us. So no, I am not changing over to Republican per se. However, I do see the why we as black people, we need to definitely be more conservative on that and darn gone, you know, leave the gun laws alone. Because we already know there's fixing to be some darn gone a repeat of history, except this time we will not go down. Once again, we stay ready so we don't have to get ready. Like I told y'all seen what happened when slavery ended. Now, we know that the for-profit prisons is the modern day version of slavery. So comparing and contrasting what is to be destined to be next by the same descendants of people who are operating the same exact way as they Ku Klux Klan darn gone counterparts that own slaves, what's going to happen when you end the slavery? What's going to happen when you end for-profit prisons? You're going to have like a modern day era of Jim Crow. So once again, we need to darn gone be prepared for the darn gone, like I said, come on to down here to the 260 if you want to, baby. There's a reason why every time the Klan want to start up in North Carolina, them bitches always roll right on past. You go to Enrico Haven in Winston-Salem. You go up to Charlotte, but bitch, you don't darn gonna come down here because we ain't dealing with that. And a lot more black people need to be like that nationwide because best believe it's coming, honey. But getting back on to this though. In early 80s, America committed to strengthening the capacity of historically black colleges and universities to provide quality education. In Executive Order 12320, President Obama undermined that commitment with changes to the PLUS loan requirements. We call for legislation to triple the current federal allotment to HBCUs. Schools like Georgetown, built by slaves, have an endowment over $1 billion. This is a transfer of wealth from ADOS to whites. Our agendas demand that the federal government fully endow our remaining HBCUs in a dollar amount that meets the budgetary needs of each institution. In addition, ADOS students who attended HBCUs should receive a discount in the form of a 75% tax credit, given that our inability to pay the rising cost of education has directly led to the racial wealth gap coming from slavery. I'm going to have to give a little bit pushback on that. ADOS who choose schools outside of HBCU network should receive a 50% government funded discount. This is why that ain't going to work. Number one, you had too many candidates that's proposing darn on free college for everybody. So that actually affects black people for the positive, not the negative. So why, argue for a 75 to 50% discount when in this case you have the leading candidates that's actually proposing 100% discount, where the first 2 to 4 years of your college is 100% free, honey. FREE. So let's not argue for discounts in this case when they're actually proposing darn on free. So I'd rather go for the free as opposed to darn on discounts in this case. But to get back into Obama's ass, honey. Once again, HBCUs was set up for the premise of black American descendants of chastised slaves. But of course, his black half being from Africa persuasion, he's not able to relate to that, and it didn't affect him at all when it came to gutting those darn gone loans and stuff that were for historical black colleges, because black colleges was for black American descendants of slaves, not African, immigrants or, first generation black Americans who has a parent immediately from the continent of Africa. So doesn't surprise me, but it's real appalling. Is more so, what is Michelle's thoughts on this? I would love to know what was Michelle's thoughts on when all of this was being proposed, considering that she's a full black woman. So it's not necessarily surprising from somebody who was raised up for a white mother to be doing this, but being a person who was raised by 2 black parents, I really want to know Michelle's thoughts on this bullshit more than anything, and what made her get along with this darn gone bullshit that darn gone President Barack Obama was proposing in the first place. But like I said, with free colleges and darn gone debt forgiveness that's going to be for all American people, eradicating all our student loan debts, honey, we can darn gone toss out all of this right here, right now. So next is finding published. Oh, but then again, I will say we can still have a discount for, the master's degree programs, because, you still got graduate school, which is not included. Once again, I should clarify. The eradication of student loans is one thing, and free college is only up to 4 years. So when you go for your master's degree and your PhD, you still got to pay full cost. So in regards to HBCUs, I definitely think a discount should apply in those situations for, master degree programs and for doctorate degree programs. But for regular undergraduate degrees, not so much. Like I said, when they are trying to make it free for everybody, don't try to argue for a discount when the goal is free is better than a discount, baby. So next is finding published in USA Today concluded that the top universities graduated ADOS in tech, but those graduates can't find jobs in Silicon Valley. Only 2% of technology workers at 7 Silicon Valley companies are black, according to the report, and many of those are black immigrants, not ADOS. And according to a study, grammar error, I'm not the best when it comes to grammar. My damn self, I was a C average student when it came to grammar, A when it came to literature, honey. So I averaged out as a B minus as a result. But never start off a sentence with "and" in this context. Instead, you should have kept this all as one sentence instead. So a little grammatical error. I'll definitely employ them in the future to use Grammarly, the premium version, because with the basic version, the word might be spelled correctly, but it doesn't pick up on actual, grammatical errors such as starting a word off with "and." So yeah, had to correct that real quick. And according to a study by Rudiger's professor Hal Shazam, not to be confused with Shazam, honey, but Hal Shazam, American colleges graduate more tech workers than tech companies need. Hence, the HB1 program reduces opportunities for ADOS searching for careers in technology. The government must strictly limit the number of HB1 visas workers tech companies that flow in each year. I'm 50-50 on that. Woo. Bless me, y'all. Like I said, I got this darn on ACN fan going, and then I have to turn around 3 hours to turn the heat back on. This is ridiculous, but I'm surprised PwC is darn on decreasing my bill as opposed to increasing it, honey. Audit the banks to see if there are patterns of racial discrimination in lending, and require these banks to extend loans to ADOS businesses. Honey, we already seen that right there. You already got one candidate that's the front runner for getting on their behind, and that's Elizabeth Warren, honey. And especially darn on racist darn on Wells Fargo that was known for reimbursing slave owners, which was a violation of the 14th Amendment, but we don't talk about that though. These banks receive bailout from taxpayers and owe a debt to all taxpayers regardless of race. In addition, banks such as Wells Fargo use predatory schemes historically, not just during the Great Recession, to eviscerate black wealth, leading to black businesses and institutions would begin a beginning for banks to redress the harm they've caused to ADOS communities. Honey, somebody with that much darn on historical history going all the way back to the plantation of funding darn gone slave owners, I don't think you can darn gonna undo that much darn gone, because when you have an institution of over 100 years that's set in its ways, honey, you need to be proposing to fund money into your own banks. Honey, fuck darn gone Wells Fargo. Honey, forget that shit. So throw this whole shit away right here. Let me tell you something right now. The goal is not for inclusion at this point. The goal is for us to have our own. And us having our own doesn't mean that a black-owned bank, because we have black-owned banks, and you can be white as snow and can come up in there any time of the day. You can be Native American, you can be Asian. It just simply means that we're going to treat everybody fairly. Black people don't have to worry about their name sounding too ethnic in a black-owned bank, and we're going to throw your application away because it sounds like your name might be ghetto, and thus, as a result, we ain't even going to give you a try. We ain't even going to look at your credit score. Your name sounds like your credit score is a motherfucking 40. You name darn on Porsche, honey, you might have a darn on Porsche credit, honey. Maybe if your name was Lamborghini, I might darn gonna give you a darn gonna look, honey. That sounds Italian. I might darn gonna look at your Italian ass, but darn on your black ass, Porsche, Mercedes, Buick. Okay, I know nobody's named Buick, but you know they be treating us like that. Laquita, Day-Day, Pookie. And then let's say if you do have a white sounding name or a more palatable name in general, such as Michael, Michelle, Amy, Christy, Pamela, Julie, Helen, Mary, Joseph, and oh yeah, definitely the biblical names, honey. If you go into Mary and Joseph and all of them, honey, Paul, Matthew, and all of them, and then they go in and see your ass is black, then now they going into, oh hell. Now the hair texture and all of that, now you got the darn deal with all that bullshit, honey, fuck that. I propose, once again, in my reparations plan, fund our own black-owned banks. And that way we don't even have to deal with them. Because if you fund our black-owned banks, we can get to the level where we can have just as many banks in nationwide as Wells Fargo has. Because right now, our banks are we can't compete because they're too spread out compared to, you know, the Bank of Americas, the BB&Ts, the Wells Fargos, and all of that shit. But if we fund our own banks, instead of darn trying to force them to accept us when they don't want to, they'll always try to find a way to undermine us. Once again, fund our own banks as opposed to darn trying to because this is like a Colin Kaepernick situation. Stockholm trying to go back to a people that you know is going to continue to abuse you no matter what laws you try to propose. It's like, no. Instead, fund our own shit. Fund our own. We can darn gonna compete. At one time, as a matter of fact, after slavery, 10 years after slavery, black people who they like to call lazy, ever since we stopped picking the motherfucking darn gone cotton for free, we was deemed motherfucking lazy. But we so damn lazy, right, that within 10 years, we had a wealth of $66 million, which is comparable to several trillion dollars in today's darn gone currency. We managed to make trillions of dollars in our own wealth, in our own black banks, before some of these racist motherfuckers came and darn gone extracted and took the wealth from us. And darn gone subject us to darn gone Jim Crow. You don't mention that part of darn gone history, right? You don't hear about what happened after the Emancipation Proclamation of 1865. They tell you all that about darn gone Abraham Lincoln, but they don't tell you about the part where he funded black banks and our black banks got darn gone extracted from us that were equal to today's current currency of trillions of dollars that was stolen from us. So when you have people like me that's proposing trillions of dollars of reparations, I am showing you historical facts of why we should be proposing trillions of dollars for reparations, just off of the historical facts of what has been taken from our ancestors. So I don't come at this shit half-ass. And I ain't about no darn gone inclusion at this point and trying to darn gone have me come to the white masses table. Oh, well, you finally gonna see me a little bit differently in Wells Fargo, but you have 100-some years of darn gone corruption. Fuck you all together. Bitch, give me my own. And fund my own motherfucking darn gone shit. That's what you do. That's how I am right now. Fuck the honey. Fuck the darn gone inclusion shit. Now, we still need inclusion in general as far as day to day. We don't have to worry about walking down the street and having to turn and the cop darn gonna pull us over. It might be a 50% chance that, you know, we are darn gonna unjustly darn gonna thrown to the ground and everything else. But a white darn gone man can literally take your own baton and whoop your ass upside the head. And you don't pull out your gun one time. But let a darn gone 110-pound teacher, no more than 5'2", take her to the sweet time putting her foot in the car. You want to swing her out the damn car like she's a motherfucking rag doll. So yeah, we do need some fair treatment, inclusion as far as when it concerns criminality and when we are getting charged with crimes. There does not need to be a disproportionate in how sentences are handed down. However, when it comes to economics, honey, we no longer need to be darn on funding darn on white historical banks such as Wells Fargo. Honey, fuck them all the motherfucking together, bitch. Fuck them all the way together. I said what the fuck I said. And ain't no changing my mind on it. I'm sorry, y'all, but that shit right there really pissed me the fuck off. I don't think y'all ever see me this irritated on this channel, but honey, that right there, I only fuck a Wells Fargo. But next they go to say mandate the government advertising budget include black media. There is no ADOS community without our own media incentivized through legislative action that all major companies spend 10% of their advertising budget with ADOS media in exchange for tax credits. In addition, mandate that 10% of government advertising for government agencies, armed forces, and other auxiliary programs go to the majority of ADOS-owned media companies. Okay, here we go with the okay, yeah, you was right with the 15% earlier. Where was that 15% that we broke down earlier for proportions of, you know, loans given out? It was so long ago, y'all. I think it might have been on the next. Oh, there we go. Entrepreneur capital. Since we are 15% of the nation, we should proportionally get 15% of the loans. Now, I don't know why Tony Yvette now trying to decrease it to 10%. But, like, ideally, if you take away all the foreign immigrants and biracials and what is considered really black, we realistically probably are just 10% in the first place. Which is why I said in my reparations plan, we need a DNA test so we'll know how to break down these numbers when it comes to proposing laws like this. Because right now, our numbers are so darn convoluted. You know, foreign immigrants and first generations are considered African American. Now, when you hear Kamala Harris, an Indian woman, being referenced as the second African American senator elected into Congress, when you have President Barack Obama, who has a white American mother, and a Kenyan father be referenced as an African American, and he will be counted on the census as African American, that is very problematic. So we need to deal with addressing that first before we can even break down the percentages. But at this current point in time, we represent roughly 15% of the population. So naturally, by default, anything proportionally, we should be darn on arguing to be closer to 15%, not 10%. So instead of 10%, that number should be increased to 15% into the time being until it shows that we represent just 10%. Then you can proportionally put it down to 10%. But right now, since they have us at 15%, let's use that to our advantage, honey. Put that, increase that to 15% of the advertisement. Especially since black people right now as a marginalized group, we already represent the majority of the advertising dollars. You have to darn gonna put on black media networks that darn gonna get views and certain stuff. We are the most consumers of darn gone media as it is. So why is we only getting darn gone 10% in the first place? Honey, it can actually be argued that we should get more, considering that proportionally. If we base this off of who is the largest consumers of the media, it's actually black people, even though we are the minority. Once again, catch that darn on ironic tea. Even though we're the minority, we actually are the highest consumers in the form of media. Our shows and stuff rank the most. So by default, if we go off of that type of fairness, we should be getting more. We should be getting realistically 30-40%. But you know, we are known to stretch a darn on 15 cents to a darn on dollar. So we'll settle for 15. Because we as black people, we are so resourceful and resilient of people and innovative as of people that we can darn on still do better with 15%. Because look what we're doing now as darn on as marginalized and de-economically, you know, and economically oppressed that we are right now. Even being economically oppressed in Bryan Island, dealing with Comcast, and we having our civil rights potentially in jeopardy as far as you know, discrimination laws and stuff is concerned, especially with their media and Comcast, you know, forbid. And then I think they took off Stars today as of December the 10th. I think they said that they was eradicating Stars off of all the major player channels, such as, you know, Spectrum, Comcast, Xfinity, and all of that, which hence why Power had to go in its season finale, because it definitely wasn't for the lack of views. Because while Empire was going down, honey, Power was staying consistent. I will give 50 Cent that. However, due to the fact that it was a black-owned network, because I think 50 Cent, correct me if I'm wrong, actually has the ownership in Stars. And P. Diddy has an ownership in Revolt, but you actually have to have the most highest package to even get Revolt on your television, as opposed to it being at one of the more affordable costs. So it's all that shit that goes on with us, and even then we still whoop motherfuckers' asses when it comes to darn on media representation. How about that? So proportionally, we should be getting more damn money. But we, once again, I say, you know, increase this to 15%. Because even with 15%, honey, we can still darn gone make a darn gone dollar out of 15, baby. So, yeah, I have to disagree with this a little bit. Increase it to 15%. And I'm 100% on board with it. Once again, I apologize in advance for my hostility. But this is a very passionate subject for me. Y'all know that being descendant, you know, 6+ generations from North Carolina on both sides of my family, it really strikes home to me. Being in a Confederate state that is just 10 minutes from the market house, well, a half hour walk, I can be right down at the historic market house on downtown Fayetteville. And then the courthouse where they sold the slaves, honey, this shit, I know it affects me personally. From the historical history of 6 generations of my family being here, and even longer for the native side of my family. It really affects me personally. So y'all gonna have to excuse me if I seem a little bit more amped up today than normal in my videos. But honey, this really burns my gears when I see all the hypocrisy that goes on today. Like I said, this is gonna go on record as my longest video. Matter of fact, just 2 more minutes, I think I'm gonna beat the record for my longest video that's current to date. Because I think my longest video is 1 hour and 38 minutes long. So then it goes into ADOS college debt should be forgiven in the same way losses were forgiven for the banks on Wall Street. Those executives oversaw the evaporation of billions in global wealth. ADOS graduates brought into the idea that the key to success in life was in education, and there was a place for us in America, only to find out after graduating that we were locked out. We can't afford to bear the burden of life. Once again, they already proposing, you know, equality as far as student loan debt forgiveness for everybody, and, you know, free education up to 4 years. So once again, we can strike that out. A health care credit to pay for medical coverages for ADOS. This would cover surgery, pharmaceutical, counseling needs. As an example, we would like to see a lineage therapy whereby ADOS leadership in cooperation with licensed therapists and psychiatrists develop a therapy curriculum to help members of the ADOS understand and manage their ancestral traumas. This therapy should come at no cost to the ADOS community. This would be best fitted under a Merriam-Webster agenda, which is why I had to get into Tony Yvette's ass, because I'm trying to figure out why isn't the support more there for Merriam-Webster, because not only do you have nearly most of the liberal candidates proposing Medicare for all, but Merriam-Webster is the only candidate that has proposed to go into preventative and post-treatment care, including, therapy, including, dealing with nutritional health and all of that, which is very beneficial to black people. So, and then considering that she's the only candidate that's for direct reparations, I don't see her, opposing adding this on for, actual therapy to deal with psychological post-traumatic stress trauma from dealing with living in America while black today. Dealing with all the stuff that affects us today. To the point where when Martin Luther King died, he died at the age of 38, I believe, but they said he had the heart of a 58-year-old man just because of the stress that was endured upon him. And imagine how more stressful it's gotten for us today, especially in this modern day age of technology and shit, where they can discriminate against you with just the sound of your name, and they have technology that can kick your doggone application out to the side. But if you put white on your name and your name sound flamboyant enough, all of a sudden you get a call back. So imagine the stress on our doggone hearts and shit as black people today. So this would definitely fit under a Merriam-Webster bill, which is why I said it would employ us for us to support the person who's supporting us. You can't doggone mention all of this and complain, but then when you have somebody who's close to it, we're not supporting them, because then it feels like they're justified in knowing us together, because they's like, well, damn, Merriam-Webster doggone supported reparations and a Pacific Black agenda, and y'all can't even get her ass onto the damn debate stage. So if y'all can't even get the candidate that is somewhat supportive of the policies that you want, why in the hell should we even take you seriously? So it seems like they bypassed us and they're gonna went to the Hispanics instead. Because when you have people such as Andrew Yang, who's proposing universal basic income, when you have Merriam-Webster, we having them struggle to get on the debate stage. Now, I think I just got a notification that Andrew Yang just qualified for the debates. He just managed to get in. So that's good for him if that's true. However, we still have Merriam-Webster, who's a long way from the darn on debate stage, where that would be the platform where she can have the most visibility. Now, she's still out here giving it the good fight. But, honey, she needs to be seen more by the people. And we need to doggone help her be seen more, because she's speaking on our issues. So, if we recognize that we need to support people who are supporting our issues, we need to also back them financially so they can continue on with trying to represent our issues. Or otherwise, why would we expect anybody else to take us seriously when we're not even doggone supporting the people who are seriously doggone generally for us, such as a Merriam-Webster and somewhat like Andrew Yang as well. So going into the last statement of this, America has never atoned for its original sin of slavery in the form of reparations. It is in our position that H.R. 40 be fully rewritten to include reference to ADOS as a recipient group, cash payment, and additional supportive measures implemented. We need to gather the data on the... No, the hell we don't. No, the hell we don't. We need to gather the data on the level of wealth that was lost as a direct result of slavery. In the era of Jim Crow that followed, the paper economic of reparations assessed the value today. Professor Sandra Dari Jr., a leading economist and premier scholar. Okay, so somebody within the field of knowledge, so I won't fully, be quick to put them down. So I actually do like to hear my people who's from the field of economics. Shout out to Boyce Watkins and Julia Mavro over at the Roland Martin show, the light-skinned sister with the kinky hair, kinky sandish red hair. And now we got Professor Sandy Dari Jr. Like I said, Boyce Watkins is an economist as well, I believe. Or he got, he got his master's degree, I believe, in finance. and Darnell Frank have illustrated using the work of Yvette, Gallery, and Kilogram the gains and wealth to white Southerners from ownership of blacks in 1859 was 3.2 million. In today's dollars, the value of that debt is estimated to be somewhere between 5 to 10 trillion, depending on the interest rate used for compounding purposes. ADOS demands that there be a real review of direct payouts needed to be made to eligible recipients from gathered data, and progress be made towards making ADOS families whole. Without these measures being instituted, ADOS are locked out of the country. Our ancestors built during chattel slavery. Without reforms through transformative government, we will be left continue to live a third world life in a first world country. Okay, so second thing, I don't denounce that one as well. As y'all know, I came up with my own reparations proposal. I have studied history. Y'all know that was my subject in school. When I was going to be a licensed veterinarian, my minor, in addition to marine biology and chemistry, was going to be in history, and with an emphasis in African and minority studies. So with that extensive, knowledge of studying, African history, Black American history, including the wealth that was extracted from us after, slavery, from our banks, getting to the tune of trillions of dollars, and that was directly stolen from us. From some people were not made quickly aware that slavery ended, and it took to 12 years later for southern states to be made aware that they were no longer slaves. And then you had certain areas that had the atrocities, such as the Devil's Punch Bowl. Shout out to Taz Exclusive for his extensive documentary on the Devil's Punch Bowl and the true origins of where they lie, because they even tried to hide where the Devil's Punch Bowl is located today. And darn on Taz and Nyla had to go on a live exhibition to show us where the the Devil's Punch Bowl is at. So we had all that shit. And then I told y'all about the corruption with darn on Wells Fargo. So we already know that the debt is in the trillions. Now, realistically, what is the amount that they're going to come up off of? And I said they need to come up off of $6 trillion. And I showed how that would not darn on put the country in a downturn. Matter of fact, it will put the country in an economic boom. I break all that down in my reparations plan, so check that video out below, probably on another day, because I know this video is already going to be pushing 2 hours. So to see that video, that's an hour today. Unless y'all want to just listen to me half the day, I implore y'all to, look at that video another day if you don't want to hear too much of me speaking. Because like I said, this is the longest video in the history of 7 years of me doing YouTube. So, and I got a very raspy voice. It doesn't help that my nose is partially stuffed as well. So I know y'all like, well, Juan, you speaking a lot of sense today. So we're going to tolerate this darn on raspy, darn on tone voice of y'all. And I definitely applaud y'all who have made it this far in my video. Because sometimes I hate to even listen to my own self on the playback. I do not have the most darn on pleasant, darn on speaking voice. So I definitely thank y'all who have listened to me rant and complain. But it was for a reason of passion. And I showed y'all, like I said, I'm very much vested in this for my Black American people. And the $5 to $10 trillion is definitely right. Like I said, $6 trillion fall right dead smack in the middle of that. And I show how that can be proposed. Because I seen that with Tone and them, they got all the backstory right. But economically, I'm the one that came up with the final proposal. So everybody got a position to play in this. So shout out to everybody who's doing their part. Shout out to Tone. Shout out to Yvette. Even shout out to Tyreek. I haven't seen what he's proposing with the Foundation of Black Americans. I would do a compare and contrast video after I figure out what's the Foundation of Black America agenda is about. But shout out to him too. And even a pat on my back for myself for breaking down how reparations can be paid out without driving our economy up. Because the current excuse is we $21 trillion in debt. and how the hell they gonna come out with $6 trillion out of nowhere. The money has to be backed by something. We just can't pull something out to pay out people, and especially when we're not directly responsible for it, even though there can be evidence showing that no, you still responsible for it. When we have the prison industry operating today off of the backs of blacks, and it's considered modern day slavery, honey, the people around today are directly responsible for it. So let's not darn gonna act like reparations is just for slavery of yesterday. We're talking about the slavery that's going on today as well. We're talking about the redlining and shit that's going on today as well. The texture discrimination and the workplace exclusion because of texture hair that is going on today as well. There's a lot of shit that's going on today. So don't get the darn on talking about to my white people and other non-black people who disagree with this subject. Get to talking about, oh well, we should be responsible for what our ancestors did. Okay. Even with the day, you still should be responsible for what you're darn gonna perpetuate today. So what's your excuse now? The time ends here. We are old, adept, and it should be paid. And I have a whole reparations plan, which does not drive up the economy, but actually shows how the economy can be brought down. How we can bring down the economic debt, while simultaneously building up black people to be economically equal. So once again, what's the excuse? Because you darn gone took a risk on bailing out darn gone the automotive industry for cars. But you don't want to darn gone bail out black people who are actually economically oppressed. And we the hardest working group of people in this motherfucker. We built up this shit. And even as an oppressed group of people, we're still darn gone succeeding in several areas. Like I said, adept is old, and we are definitely seeking our payments. I had to go blow my nose real quick, so if I sound, magically more clear, that is the reason why. But yeah, it's time to collect. I implore y'all to check out my reparations plan. I am proposing $6 trillion to be paid out for American descendants of enslaved Africans. I don't even like the term slaves because that implies that we were destined to just be for the purpose of slaves when we had a whole rich history prior to being put over here. We were darn gone kings and queens, and even the working class was darn gone seen in high notable regard. We had some of the most prestigious inventions over in the motherland that we brought over here to America, even before some of our people was brought here against their will. So yes, there were black people here before slavery. But for the ones that were brought here during slavery and the ones who were snatched here that was already here and we all got convoluted together, we are all owed what is owed to us. So once again, the debt is $6 trillion. Which $5 trillion of that, I'm just going to briefly describe it, and then y'all can look at the rest to get how this will be executed. $5 trillion in economic restitution. Economic restitution will be going to black-owned schools, which are not limited to HBCUs. We will also fund charter schools that are founded by black people for black people. That way we can have our own history taught without the risk of it being altered. We can have our languages. We can start employing Africans to translate the languages, so that way when we go converse with our people in the motherland, we can speak a little bit of Kiswahili. We can speak a little bit of Yoruba. We can speak a little bit of Ashanti, Ghanaian, Nigerian, the list goes on and on. So that's why charter schools are important. Also learning about our black history that they don't teach us in school as well. And nor, from what I'm looking at lately, are not teaching even in the HBCUs. So that's why we also need to fund our own black historical charter schools in addition to HBCUs. We need to fund our black-owned banks. Stop darn on begging for acceptance into darn on banks that have a 100+ year history of oppression. Honey, an old dog don't change their tricks. And when you have an institution that's been passing down from generation to generation on maintaining that type of racism, honey, we can't darn on risk darn on them automatically changing their stripes all of a sudden, when they darn on inherently been keeping the same shit going on for many generations. So we need to fund our own instead of trying to get into theirs. Instead of trying to have Wells Fargo and trust them to do right, we need to get our own banks right and get them equivalent to the numbers of banks that are like Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Nationwide. We need to increase our black-owned banks. That way we don't even have to worry about the possibility of discrimination. We also need grants for our beauticians, because historically it was the beauticians and the morticians that got black people into the positions that they were in Congress to even propose said changes on behalf of black people. Once again, shout out for Nala Says for dropping that historical knowledge. But we definitely need to give grants to us as well in our trade schools. Now, granted that all the candidates are proposing, schools that not have fees, free college education for trade schools up to 4 years. That also includes trade schools to a certain extent, but if you go back for a secondary trade, that might still cost you money, because I think there's still a cap on how many times you can go to school. It's not fully free. There's limitations to it. So in those cases, we should have grants for those cases dedicated to black descendants of American enslaved Africans that were brought here against their will. So we need to fund our, estheticians. We need to fund our doctors, because when you have where it's not even an economics issue. Once again, the highest touring artist in the history of music, the third highest net worth woman in music, that's a black woman, the third highest black paid entertainer, female entertainer, Beyonce. She's worth $500 million. Now, why am I mentioning her wealth? Why am I mentioning that she's the highest touring black act in the history of music, surpassing the king of pop himself, Michael Jackson, surpassing the queen of rock and roll, her protege, Tina Turner, surpassing the fashion icon who has sold over 250 million records, the legendary part of the Supremes, the lead singer, and became a solo success herself, Diana Ross. Why am I mentioning Beyonce, who's worth $500 million herself, not including the wealth of her husband, who's a billionaire on his own? Why am I mentioning Beyonce? Why am I also including the highest paid female athlete of 2018? I think she also gained the title in 2019 as well. Has a net worth of over $150 million, made over $30 million last year alone. Is one of the most phenomenal athletes who unjustly gets darn targeted for tests for to see if she's injecting herself with steroids, because they can't believe that the excellence that she exudes is just naturally hers. They think she has to cheat because she's that damn good. Why am I also mentioning Serena Williams? Why am I mentioning those two beautiful black melanated queens that are descendants of American textile slavery? Because Serena Williams, once again, like I mentioned, is worth $150 million. Beyonce is worth $500 million. Also, even if we go down to our lower millionaires, one of the third highest paid housewives that is on the highest rated of all the housewife franchise, Real Housewives of Atlanta, makes the most money out of everybody. Once again, black entertainment. The irony that they darn gonna say we don't have no value, but time and time again, no matter what industry you put us in, we tend to, if given the right circumstances, we always show not only do we equal, but we supersede, baby. Not only can we be equal, but bitch, 9 times out of 10, we usually supersede. That's what really hurts their egos, baby. But darn on the third highest paid housewife, I believe, currently on there, you got Candy Burress, you got Nene Leakes, and then you got Kenya Moore. Kenya Moore is worth approximately $750,000. Y'all know when she got taken off in season 11, her income took a dive, and she had some financial issues and all that, and she might be suffering some more financial issues if that divorce goes through with her current husband. We hope that doesn't happen to her. But even with that, she still has $1 million company with Kenya Moore Edges, which I do plan on investing once I get my coins right. But with that being said, worth $750,000 on average. Serena Williams worth $150 million. Beyonce worth $500 million. All three of them dealt with Here's why I mentioned those three beautiful sisters. Don't matter whether you're light skinned, don't matter whether you're classified as Creole, or you're seen as a dark skinned woman with more palatable features, such as Kenya Moore, because she got the thinner nose and, the wavier texture hair. It don't matter if you're an unambiguous black woman. When it came to giving birth, all three of the women, regardless of their economic status, nearly died on the operating table due to the racial prejudice that goes on in the hospitals when it comes to treating black women in the hospital. So once again, listen to me again. Beyonce, who is our modern day legend, who is revered to the status of Michael Jackson. She is literally like the Michael Jackson status of the day when it comes to legendary status. She's a legend amongst the legends of the day. You got Serena Williams, the baddest that's ever done it in the sports industry. And then you got Kenya Moore, reality TV gold. All of them suffered from preeclampsia and, all of that, nearly died. Serena Williams mentioned about heavy bleeding and everything, and how she dealt with fibroids and everything else. And all of them face issues in regards to medical care. Which is why we also should have special funds set up for the Dr. Jackies of the world and the Dr. Simone. Shout out to the Married to Medicine crew. Shout out to our OBGYNs, our black OBGYNs. They should be funded specifically for the health of ours as well. Because when you have economically treated us in such a way where we cannot seek, health care in the same way compared to our white counterparts. And then when these issues come across on us, and then y'all propose feminine hygiene products that are contributing more to the problem to every woman, not just black women, but black women face it even more. And we're not taught any other way. You got to always pass and the stay free and all of that that's laced with the chemicals that's inducing fibroids. And then when you have to deal with that on top of pregnancy, on top of preeclampsia and borderline hypertension and all of that, and then when you are over the age of 35, you're naturally high risk and you deal with a possibility of Down syndrome and all of that as well. When you have doctors who treat you a different way compared to your white counterparts, that is very dangerous for the birth of our upcoming generation that has yet to be named. So for the safety of our up and coming black people who are not even here yet, we should also employ special funds not only towards black doctors, since there is a clear bias in the medical industry against black women specifically, but we should also focus that to be concentrated on our OBGYNs. Once again, we should focus that to be on OBGYNs. Also, we should have our own neighborhoods built up that we can fund. Housing grants. Black farmers went from being a third of the farmers to having over 100,000 farmers, I believe, to now being less than 2,000. How's that so? We dropped down to, I think they said we went from being a third to now 3% in representation. All the farmers get jacked up in general off of, corrupted seas and, with Congress and the stuff that's going on now. But black farmers, once again, getting the work. So we need grants also for our farmers. All of that is in the economic restitution plan of reparations. And then $1 trillion is for the cash payouts, which I have a disbursement of how that goes down. For the sake of this video, it's already 2 hours. Longest video I've ever done in history, so I won't go on in detail about that. I would just encourage you to look at the breakdown for reparations of how it should be dispersed as far as the cash payout. But economically, restitution wise, we should have our neighborhoods, we should have our charter schools, we should have special grants for our black farmers, our OBGYNs, our our other doctors and our inventors, our entrepreneurs. We need our entrepreneur grants. You believe it or not, even though entrepreneurs represent 15% of people who want to be entrepreneurs, sometimes the 15% of them actually helps uplift. It's no coincidence that the top 1% has more wealth than the bottom 90% of America, because they know how to proportion the money. And if we can get black people to that regard, where we can proportion our money, except with black people, we're naturally altruistic. You see what our darn on millionaires and billionaires are doing compared to the white counterparts, honey. And not the shit on, the Bill Gates and stuff. Yes, Bill Gates, I understand he does stuff. But look at ours in comparison. The Beyonces and stuff that does stuff that goes without saying. Help bailing people out of prison. Helping domestic women suffering from domestic violence get new shelter. And giving them educations and stuff. Women who have become addicted to drugs, giving them proper rehabilitation. All this under Beyonce, Kelly Rowland, Jay-Z, that don't even get mentioned. They, and the list goes on and on. Even helping out Senators Kamala Harris and Cory Booker with even proposing their criminal justice reform. So when people talk shit about, Jay-Z, when has he spoke about black issues and everything like that, but the actual criminal justice reform bill that Cory Booker and Kamala Harris even came up with really was darn gonna proposed by Jay-Z. Now, when you look at that right there. But once again, like I said, as far as the cash disbursements, that is also in the reparations plan that I proposed. The amount is $6 trillion, $5 trillion to be spread out over a course of 10 years, which I showed how that can be possible, how that money can be dispersed without putting our economy in a deficit, but instead actually putting our economy in a surplus, thus decreasing our deficit. Once again, instead of increasing our deficit, you could give us $5 trillion in economic restitution over 10 years and decrease our deficit simultaneously, while also immediately giving us $1 trillion in reparations. Not over a course of 10 to 20 years, because if you can give darn on reparations to the automotive industry within one day, if you can give a $2 trillion tax credit to wealthy top 1/10% within one day, it's no excuse why $1 trillion in reparations in the form of cash disbursements cannot immediately be paid out once we get the order set up of who qualifies, and then you can immediately give it all out at one time. There does not need to be no 20 years. That's where I disagree with Merriam-Webster on. And if you want to know why in more detail, once again, check out my reparations video down below on the cash disbursement of reparations and the economic restitution, which is the $5 trillion that I pose. And the $1 trillion is once again the cash reparations. Now I know that, let me see. They came out with their own roadmap to reparations, but due to time restraints, I put that in another video because this is already a 2-hour video as it is, and I probably end up talking for a whole nother hour. So since this is my first 2-hour video, let's deal with this milestone right here. I don't want to go into 3 hours. I'm burning out, y'all. So I'm going to end it right here, and we're going to get into part 2 with their roadmap to reparations and how it compares to mine. So y'all heard me mention mine, along with, by the time I come out with this video, y'all will already hopefully looked at my reparations plan, and we're going to compare and contrast. So that would be part 2, and then also I will look into Tyreek's, and that would be part 3. So look out for those videos. If you want to be notified when they come out, definitely feel free to subscribe. If you're not already, hit the thumbs up button. When you subscribe, it gives you an option of how you want to be notified. Hit the all notifications. That way you get all the notifications for me. That way you don't miss one. So that is it, y'all. If you like this video, feel free to thumbs up, subscribe, share this, and I will see y'all soon with more videos. Mwah.